welcome to Unclouded Eye, your stop for the astrological forecast of the week and some cosmic chit-chat. I'm Ashley Brooks.
And I'm Ty Gowan with the chit-chat.
Oh, yeah. You do great with the chit-chat.
Thank you for empowering me.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Right. So,
today is a big day.
Today is my birthday.
That's right.
Yes.
World's best Leo in front of me right now.
Oh, thank you. I'll take that title gladly. There's some great Leos, of course. But...
Who are some top 5 Leos for you?
Oh, we talked about some of them in the episode a couple weeks ago. Yeah, like I included some of my very favorite Leos, but personal Leos that I know personally, there's a lot. There's a lot of wonderful Leos, but you know, top Leos, like I love Kate Bush. She's a great, great Leo. You know, we've got some winners on there. We've got some great, I invite you to go back to the Leo episode if you haven't heard it.
Here, Ash's top Leos.
Yeah.
You heard it here first.
I think that was the Bermuda Triangle episode.
Good memory.
Yes.
It's kind of tabula rasa for me.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like a complete dump of information once I get done and I move on to the next story.
Right. Yeah, that's how you have to be. You have to just let it go.
Well, I would love to do a little bit different of an opening for your birthday. As you can see here, I have some shiny cards.
Ooh.
So this is actually a deck of rune cards given to me by a friend, Aldana, while we were doing Haunt Me. It's by this artist. I just love their art. And these cards are so cool for me. So you know how it goes. And if you don't mind shuffling it up and putting your energy in there.
Sure.
And then drawing 1, 2, and 3 and putting them right here on the table. What I'll say is that for runes, for people who don't know what a rune reading is or hasn't gotten one before or unfamiliar with Nordic culture, this is their divination system. And so generally you can see them in rune stones. I generally use those, but it doesn't show up so well on camera. So we're using the cards today, and they are similar to tarot in the aspect of divination only, I think. I find runes a bit more blunt and a bit more direct, and I really like people to kind of interpret their own meanings when we're doing a rune reading. So what we're going to look at right now is Ash drew 3 cards. So this is going to be for her birthday, and let's just say not the specific day, but the energy around your next year.
Okay, cool.
So we're going to do like now energy, mid-year, and then when you're coming up on your next birthday.
Okay? I love that.
We're reading for you, so if it's oriented in the upright position to you, that'll be a benefic aspect of it. And then when they're in Merkstav, which will be when it's facing me, for tarot it would be reversed, but that would be a malefic aspect for the most part.
Yeah. These are cool. They're very sturdy and
they're
thick.
so sturdy, right?
Yeah, I love that.
These will be with me the rest of my life.
Yeah.
So we're going to flip this upside down.
Oh, no.
So immediately.
It's in Merkstav.
It's in Merkstav. But, you know, not the worst one to do that. There's also 8 runes that cannot be reversed. They're too powerful. So
I love
hopefully
that.
we'll have some of those.
There's some tarot cards that I feel like even when they're reversed, the meaning's still
The same.
Yeah.
So this is Kenaz, and this is the rune of fire. It's the torch rune. So with it being in Merkstav, though, normally it's a lot about creativity and creating what your heart desires, being a leader in your creativity, really diving down onto that fiery energy. And this is the fire time of the year, too. So it's interesting that you picked that.
Yeah.
But with it being in Merkstav, what it's telling me is that there's 2 options here. You are either having trouble connecting to some creative aspects of your life right now and having some false starts, or, and this is probably a little bit more like it, you're finding out that you're burning yourself a little bit. So you're going too hot, too fast.
Yeah, that's kind of, it's a little combination of both, I think.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I think what this tells us is to find the balance in that. It also tells me that in this time of your life right now, too, you have a leadership role around people around you. And that might be adding some struggle to your life with it being upside down. Imagining it's the dark of night and you're walking through the woods with a torch and your followers are behind you. You're the source of safety. So that responsibility to a Viking might be a little bit too much for you right now.
Okay, yeah.
Trying to balance creativity, leadership, what you want and what the world wants from you right now, it could be a lot.
Okay.
Where we're moving to mid-year is this is also upside down.
Oh,
But
great.
this is a rune of ice. So it's Hagalaz,
Fire and ice.
fire and ice. So what I would say is that there's going to be some tumultuous growth moments coming in because these are these are opposite each
Yeah.
other. So Hagalaz is the rune of hail, but what I like to describe it as more of the rune of delay and trying to find a meaning in an unfortunate thing that happens. So what I always try to do the visualization of here is a hailstorm comes through and destroys your crops. You're like, oh, woe is me. This is so sad. Like, I worked so hard on these crops, all these things in my life, maybe what you're holding up too much of right now.
Uh-huh.
When the hail comes through, it will take away everything that is not strong enough to withstand that hail of your life.
Okay.
So you can either be bummed out that you've lost X, Y, and Z, or grateful for the fact that when something as strong as a hailstorm comes through, a portion of your life still remains and can weather that storm.
Right. Maybe it's a blessing in disguise. Like if all those crops came through, I wouldn't even have been able to deal with them.
Exactly. It could be breaking you down, especially looking at some of the fire here, where it's saying you might have too much on your plate right now. Moving forward, you're going to have a clean sweep to wipe some of those things away.
Okay. It's kind of like a tower card, huh?
Yeah, it could be because like it depends how you look at it, right?
Right.
Where the tower card has a lot of meanings and people can be upset by seeing the tower card come out. Especially like the death card and stuff like that too. People have adverse reactions to it, but it's really looking past the surface value of hail and looking at the fact that also hail, when the storm passes, the crops that remain will be watered and they'll be given nutrients because the ice will melt.
That's true. Okay.
And then moving the furthest part of your life to you, I think this makes a lot of sense for me. So you have fire, ice, and then water. So you're going to be in a transformation period over the next year, is what this is telling me. And when you have the portions of your life that are causing that stress taken away from you, recognize that by listening to your subconscious, because Laguz is the rune of the river, and it tells us that the forefront of our thoughts are not the thoughts that we maybe should be listening to the most impactful. Because if you're in a river and you're swimming against the current to get where your brain is telling you where to go, you can get there, but you're going to expend a ton of energy to do that. Or you can trust the river that you're going to be moving into, especially with the fire melting the ice and turning it into water.
Yeah.
Let it lead you to where you're naturally supposed to be next year, Ash. So super listen over the next year to your subconscious. That still small voice inside of you is going to be prodding you in the direction of less stress, things that mean are the most important to you, and how to get the most out of all of that.
Oh, I love that. That tells such a clear story. It's almost like the fire melts the ice
Into the water.
Yeah.
So I really feel like that's why the cards don't, or the runes don't say this particularly, but there is such a transformational aspect over here. I think when we're doing this for your birthday next year, it would be really cool to see if you start off with a water element because you are learning a different set of skills over the next year, I think. I think it'll be very transformative for you.
Well, yeah, and applying an astrological kind of lens to this, being such a fire sign, like I have 7 planets in fire, like I'm 9. I've got like 9 fire placements. I have a lot of fire. So I almost just have to lean more into my water placements.
Depending on water, it's going to be weird for you then.
Well, I have my Mercury in Cancer and I'm a Pisces rising, and that's like all the water in my chart. So maybe I need to lean more on like the Mercury element or Mercury aspects of life or something.
I love it.
Yeah.
Interesting. And you mentioned that these are, have similarities to tarot. And you do tarot cards on Unclouded Eye, right?
Yes, I do.
So I wanted to get you another gift for your birthday.
Why? You're always giving me presents on this podcast.
It fills the beginning of the episode well.
I'm appreciative of that.
So my friends are antique dealers, and I saw this come through. It is tarot as seen through the lens of the Cabal. So it's supposed to be super mystical interpretation of how to read tarot cards. It was originally printed in the 1930s, and this is a second edition from the 60s.
Oh my gosh, this is amazing.
I was thumbing through it, and some of the ideas are crazy. The art's really cool in the back, too.
Oh, this is so cool. I love old books like this. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Oh, I'm going to have fun with this.
Isn't that art neat?
Yes. It's almost kind of Egyptian.
Egyptian. Yeah, I
for
know.
sure.
That's what drew my eye originally.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, cool. Thank you so much. I'm excited to dive into that.
You're welcome. But let's keep the podcast going and let's dive into your weekly reading, Ash.
Okay. So the other birthday present that I'm getting today on Monday, August 5th is Mercury stationing retrograde.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I much prefer your gift.
Yeah. I can't take
Thank
I can't
you,
plan it back for
Mercury.
you.
So
it starts on your birthday?
it does. It's starting at 12:56 a.m. Eastern time on the 5th. So pretty much as soon as it turns to my birthday, we've got Mercury retrograde. So all planets go retrograde, except for Earth and the Moon and the Sun, which I know the Moon and the Sun aren't planets, but like planetary bodies.
Planetary bodies.
Yeah, so everybody goes retrograde in the sky. And Mercury, Venus, and Mars tend to be the most noticeable just because they're closest to us here on Earth. So we tend to feel them maybe more acutely. And Mercury goes retrograde 3 times a year for about a month. So, it's something that we're all pretty familiar with. And it only lasts like 3.5 weeks. And so I think it's just kind of become like a cultural thing for people to be aware of Mercury retrograde, which is kind of funny. It seems like something over the last like 5-10 years.
And I'm noticing something really specific about your choice of words. You're saying Mercury retrograde, where a lot of times I've heard it Mercury in retrograde.
Yeah.
Is that
That's not correct.
That's not the okay.
So
tell me more.
retrograde means backwards. So you're basically saying Mercury in backwards when you say that. So that just doesn't make sense. But that's another like popular lexicon. So
Totally. That's why I wanted to throw it out there.
Yeah. So you would say Mercury retrograde or Mercury going retrograde.
Going retrograde.
Yeah. So what happens when a planet goes retrograde? It's really from our vantage point on Earth. It's the way that the orbits overlap with one another. And it appears for a while as though Mercury is moving backwards in the sky just because of where it is in relationship to the Earth.
Must have been so confusing to early astrologers.
Oh, yeah.
Figuring out the sky. Obviously, like, we're thinking it's flat and there's a dome above us or whatever.
Right.
They move back and forth.
And then sometimes it goes backwards.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So great job, science. Thanks for
I know. I'm so grateful that we, have all these programs that can calculate this for us now. But yes, Mercury spends about 3.5 weeks in retrograde, and it happens 3 times a year. And what it will do is it will actually go retrograde through the through the signs of the same element. So this year it is actually on a fire pattern, but because it's technically in Virgo, but it's going to go back into Leo. So it was retrograde during Aries season, and it will be retrograde during Sagittarius season this year.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and then next year it will switch. But I think last year, I don't remember what it was.
Does it do like the Avatar fire, earth, air, water?
Yeah, like it goes through. So I think it would be. I think last year it was air, I want to say. Yeah, so it would be earth next time.
I see like a short story. Like
Yeah.
something's building in my brain right now.
Yeah, there's patterns. That's a cool thing. When you study astrology long enough, you start to see all these really cool patterns. And it really is just like math and geometry and patterns.
I never would have thought that so many patterns exist. Like that's one of the cool things about doing this podcast, right?
Yeah.
Is like learning that the moon or Mercury retrograde happens.
You can say it, it's fine.
Based on element per year. Like that's just so neat. Like that there's obviously a very repeatable flow to it.
Yeah, eclipses too. We'll talk about that later on.
Okay.
But eclipses do the same thing. So yes, Mercury is stationing retrograde at 4 degrees of Virgo. So it just went into Virgo last week. We talked about that on last week's podcast. Yeah, and so it's going to be here in Virgo, kind of retracing its steps till the 14th. So next week we'll talk about it going back into Leo. But right now it will be retrograde in Virgo for the next week or so. And Mercury retrograde, Mercury rules over logic and thinking. It rules over communication. And communication can also extend to like emails and technology.
Right.
So you often see Mercury retrograde. There can be issues with like a clear flow, because a lot of it gets turned more inward when a planet is retrograde. The expression of it is more inward, so it can be harder to communicate express things. There can be things lost in translation.
Right. That's how I'm used to experiencing that in like the inevitable computer blow up.
Yeah, computer blow up, traffic jams. You know, it's basically Alanis Morissette ironic. It's like that whole song.
Don't you think?
Don't you think? Yeah. So when it's in Virgo, I think that there's going to be like Virgo rules over daily routine, work, and details. So little details might get lost. We might find some of these delays coming up in our workplace and our like kind of daily routine, things that we're used to could get shifted. Whereas with Leo, there could be more of an issue with self-expression, people not really expressing what they mean correctly. So we're going to see that more next week.
So note to my coworkers listening to this podcast right now, if I'm missing a deadline, it's literally not my fault.
Wow, you were really going to milk that one.
I'm going to milk it. We got to get something out of Mercury, right?
Yeah. So Mercury retrograde is going to last until August 28th. So pretty much for all of
The
August.
whole month, yeah.
Yeah, we're going to have that. Okay, so then on Wednesday, August 7th, we have the sun sextiling Jupiter at 9:36 a.m. Eastern time. And this is a really nice aspect. I really like this one a lot.
Okay.
The sun's at 15 degrees Leo, Jupiter is at 15 degrees of Gemini, and they're forming that nice 60-degree angle in the sky, which is known as a sextile. And a sextile is a very gentle, harmonious aspect. The sun and Jupiter are big. They're the biggest bodies in our solar system. So anytime they're making contact with each other, it's just a big, optimistic feeling. So we're having a lot of optimism coming in, maybe a lot of excitement, feeling really motivated about the future, enthusiastic. Could be more of a desire to try new things, to just kind of go out on the town and have fun. This is a very generous aspect to wanting to share things with other people, wanting to kind of keep the conversation, the party going.
That's really nice. I would have assumed that Jupiter causes issues wherever it goes.
Why would you assume that?
Just because it's like the in like Greek mythology, in Roman, it's like the king of the gods and stuff like that. And but does Jupiter represent like luck and fortuitiveness in astrology?
So Jupiter is luck. It's expansion. So it expands whatever it touches. So occasionally, like let's say you have Jupiter kind of teamed up with like in a tense aspect to Pluto or something, then it could expand on those like Pluto themes of death. So it could create havoc in those ways.
Okay.
So like, I think it is a common misconception that Jupiter is always good because it's expansive. It expands on whatever energy it touches.
So that's why we're having a good Wednesday, because the sun is a benefic. It gives us all life, Perfect. Mm-hmm.
The sun is really hard to make bad unless it's like burning you, which there can be transits that feel that way.
In reverse.
Exactly. Exactly. So with this sextile, the sextile is a gentle aspect. So we're looking at the planets involved, but we're also looking at the aspect. So if that were a square or an opposition, then I would have something different to say, about it being more tense.
I'm learning so much already.
Oh, good. I'm glad. As I say, next year at this time, maybe you'll be the teacher.
It'll just be a very Chiron specific podcast.
Yeah, you're just like niche Chiron content.
Where's he at?
Yeah,
those are the mini.
We're just checking in on Chiron every day.
Every day. Just where's he at now? Well, a little bit further than yesterday.
Yeah, but
amazing.
Still at the same degree. He's slow.
Those will be the mini-sodes that we do. Is checking in on Chiron with Ty.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I'll go compose the song right now.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, also on Wednesday the 7th, same day as that other transit, we have Mercury conjuncting Venus. And so Mercury is retrograde, so it's moving back and meeting up with Venus at 11:12 p.m. Eastern time on Wednesday the 7th. And there is a beautiful kite pattern forming in the sky. Kite is a really fortuitous, lucky pattern in astrology. It's one of the more pleasant patterns that we can have. So we have that on the 7th, the same day as that sun sextile Jupiter.
Okay.
So the kite involves a grand trine, and this time it is between the moon, Pluto, and Uranus. And then two of those planets are sextiling up to a third planet, which in this case is Neptune. So they are forming like a diamond kite-shaped pattern in the sky.
Okay.
And so it's all those like positive aspects. You've got the trines, you've got the sextiles, and the grand trine, as you might remember from past episodes, is very lucky. So that's going to form a benefic kind of energy for the day that allows for expansion to happen.
So mega good Wednesday.
Yeah, mega good Wednesday. And that Mercury conjunct Venus is amazing for relationships, communication, and especially like dealing with things that might have come up in the past because Mercury is retrograde. So there's sort of a past element to it.
Okay.
And kind of with that Venus contact to it, you might be hearing from people from your past, or you could be making peace with things from the past. There's more of this like harmonious, like finding good in these past relationships or friendships and maybe finding something that was beneficial for that.
Super cool.
Yeah, or maybe coming back around to an old creative project, something like that.
Oh, I love that idea.
Yeah.
So anything going on for the later half of the week?
No, that's it for major aspects. We've got a nice, relaxing end of the week.
How long do we get to ride this good energy coming from Wednesday, would you say? Like the kite formation, I know can't stay there for too long because the angles will start to shift. But what would you say to our listeners as far as the rest of the week goes coming off that Wednesday energy?
Yeah, so it's going to feel pretty good. Like, it's really funny because we have a whole week without any major aspects. From the 7th through the 14th, there's not really any major aspects happening in the sky. We just had the new moon in Leo on the 4th, and then there's kind of not much happening until there's going to be next week. We'll have Mars conjunct Jupiter, which is going to be great for physical energy. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of positive stuff happening next week, really until Friday the 16th. That's when things start to get a little shaky. So it's kind of very supportive for the Mercury retrograde energy.
Great.
Yeah, I've got good news, for this.
I think you
for
set
us.
up really well for your birthday.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Aside from, I can deal with the retrograde.
For sure.
I'll take it.
For sure. Ready to jump into the topic of this week, though?
I am.
Okay, so we're going to match up some astronomy with some astrology this week.
My favorite combo.
I'm going to ask you outright, do you believe if we landed on the moon?
I think so.
Okay.
But I also think that maybe they had a backup plan just in case.
Oh, that's interesting. When you think about the backup plan and the just in case, what do you think makes people believe that we didn't land on it?
I think the conspiracy is kind of around the space race, right? Like, so there were these multiple countries, but most, I think, notably the Soviet Union, USSR, was trying to get to the moon. And to be the first country to do that would be a huge power move. So, I don't know the details around like what might have been holding us back, but in terms of like having this be a race, a literal race to the moon, it would be really important to get there first.
I agree. And I think that definitely played into it quite a lot. One of the things that you just mentioned holding us back from getting there first, I actually did a deep dive into some NASA websites about this. It's actually still really hard to get to the moon.
Yeah, I was going to say, we don't really go there much.
No, and it's not from any other reason besides it's still challenging. So like it was an impossible feat to do in the 60s and it's still nearly impossible now. Like with the amount of technology that we have, I think in the past couple months, you've even seen some, I think it was Chinese spacecraft were trying to land on the moon and didn't. Like it didn't work out well, or they tipped, or they just went dark after, and like that's real and could happen at any time. So again, I think the challenge of making it to the moon is really difficult, but I personally believe that we did.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. And it was interesting because in my research of this, I found that there's a survey done in 2019. So, just a couple of years ago, honestly. And it said that 19% of people aged 18 to 49 don't believe that we landed on the moon, and they believe that it was staged. And that number is growing with the younger demographic, surprisingly.
That's so interesting.
Right?
I wonder why.
Well, I'm about to tell you why.
Good. Okay.
Thank you for asking that question. So the conspiracy theory is largely credited to one man, which is interesting.
Oh.
His name was Bill Kaysing, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right. He was a self-published author from a pamphlet called "We Never Went to the Moon: America's $30 billion Lie." Well, this could just have been like cast aside at any minute. Like I think probably would have been nowadays because there's so much out there to read. Instead, he had a little bit of credibility because he did work in an aerospace technology field. So people started to listen to him because he almost felt like this conspiracy was able to catch hold because of the minimal connection he did have with space, right?
Yeah.
So He was the head of technical presentations at the Rocketdyne Propulsion Field Laboratory for 7 years between 1956 and 1963. And during this time, he did have clearances to the U.S. Air Force and Atomic Energy Commission. But that also coincides with the time NASA was planning for the engine and components of the Apollo project. Like there was no overlap whatsoever. He just happened to also have similar experience.
Yeah.
Um, I didn't find any part of his book that led him to interacting with the Apollo 11 project at all. However, I did read a ton of comments about his book. I didn't want to go through the whole thing and give him the press, but the Amazon comments were incredible. Like going through it, and I learned why the Earth is flat. And I also learned a theory that Earth is covered by a glass dome and there's water on the outside.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know what my favorite is? Donut Earth.
Donut Earth is great.
Yeah, Donut Earth is just, there's a nice big hole in the middle, and
that's how it all works. And you know what? It's not hurting anybody. You know, Donut Earth is great for all.
I mean, round Earth is donut hole Earth.
That's right. What with Munchkin Earth.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that's kind of enough about him. But like basically he kicked it off.
That's wild that one person can have such an effect.
Right, exactly. And one person, one idea, published at the right time, had the right clearances, but did not work with the Apollo projects at all. However, what I liked was reading about the counter theory is that we have 842 pounds of moon rock currently on the surface of our globe right now that has been mined and brought back. So like literally we have gone. Like they can test it. These rocks are specific to the moon. But the conspiracy theory still holds really well because podcasters like Joe Rogan perpetuate the theory. And then I was on the subreddit Moon Hoax page, and like it was wild to see that there's so many people going at such lengths to deny the lunar landing. And the theories out there, like they are backed with crazy pseudoscience. And I actually just want to take a minute to read a couple of them.
Yeah, of course.
So I think this was a pretty common one to hear is that the shadows on the moon landing were not parallel, meaning there must have been multiple light sources of like a set. Have you heard that one before?
I think I've heard that, yeah.
So the debunk there is that it's a matter of perspective from the photographer, and that's really common in photography that based on one person's set, it will look like the shadows are pointed in different areas because the sun was so low on the horizon. It made all of the shadows of the mountains and whatnot and the astronauts stretch in very strange ways.
Shadows wouldn't work the same way as they do on Earth.
For real. Yeah. It's like, yes, because of the low angle, I would say.
Right.
Second was that the Earth is surrounded by a field of radiation that would have microwaved the astronauts if we actually did leave the planet.
I know this from experience.
Well, this is true.
Is it?
So there is a belt around the Earth called the Van Allen belt, and it is a radiation belt around the planet. However, based on the velocity, the shielding, and the size of the craft that shoots through the radiation belt so quickly, and we know about it, so we protect the astronauts from it, that they're fine. They're not getting like nuked in the space container.
Yeah, it's like getting an x-ray at the dentist.
For sure, yeah. It actually the same amount of radiation, I think. But I thought that was really interesting because it's based in reality, right?
Yeah.
And I hadn't heard about the Van Allen belt either.
Yeah, that's interesting.
In all of the photography from the first lunar landing, there's no stars in the photography. And I thought that was weird because I started looking for it and it's all black. And you'd think you're on the moon, it should be full of stars. However, it's the 1960s and we're taking, pictures with that type of technology. They're not dual blending, different exposures. So therefore, with the sun beating on them and full daylight, no atmosphere, it would have been overexposed to see any of the stars whatsoever.
That makes a lot of sense, actually.
Ultimate light pollution is day.
Yeah.
So there's no stars.
Right.
And then the one I think is most common is that the flag planted by the astronauts of the Apollo 11 missions, if you watch the video, it seems like it's blowing in the wind on its own. And there's no air, so how could it be blowing in the wind? And that's the simple one, is that scientists knew that. They knew that they wanted the flag to be seen easily. And so it sits there with a pole in it. And that's why when it was going in, it looks like it's waving in the wind, is because there's a pole so that the actual curtain of the flag doesn't deflate.
Right.
And it is
It's not just
always
laying
displayed.
flat. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense
Yeah.
as well.
The weirdest one, and so like those are the top, but I just think that this isn't like an American idea of like the space race being a conspiracy theory, because I found this one. It was crazy, from Perth, Australia, that said a woman claimed that while watching the moon landing for 2 or 3 seconds, she saw a Coca-Cola bottle rolling across the lower right quadrant of the television, like someone had dropped it offset and it rolled onto the moon surface. And she said that several letters appeared in the West Australian Gazette discussing the Coca-Cola bottle incident within 10 days of the lunar landing. And I went down a rabbit hole on this, and every source that I found on it says there was no such newspaper report.
Okay.
Like this, again, there's just an urban legend that went wild.
Wow. Yeah.
So I'm going to give you the birth date of our mystery person today, and then let you know how it relates to the moon landing hoax.
Alrighty.
So we've got August 5th, your birthday, 1930, though, in Washington, Ohio, 12:31 a.m.
Okay. Full disclosure, I know who this is just because I know everyone who has my birthday, Ty.
I mean, that's fair.
Yeah, and I wanted to be an astronaut when I was a little kid.
Okay, so
Yeah.
let's just read Neil Armstrong's birthday then, okay?
I'm not going to lie. When I do figure it out or when I know, I will say something.
No, that's perfect.
Yes,
So,
so-
yes, this is Neil Armstrong, first person to walk on the moon.
Yeah.
Let's read the
I mean, I'm clearly going to claim him as my, birthday twin.
for sure. I
Yeah.
think I have like Thomas Jefferson. If I had an astronaut instead of a slave owner, I'd be all the way about
Yeah,
that
right?
too. Yeah.
And we have the same sun and moon sign. So
Tell
got
us
it.
all about it.
Yeah, okay. So Neil is a Leo sun. His moon is in Sagittarius, same. And he is a Gemini rising, which I am not. So that's where the similarities end. So he has something called the minor grand trine, or it's also called the small talent triangle.
How do you keep all these terms in your head?
I have a glossary on here, but I mean, some of them you see more than others. This one's fairly common. What it is it's a trine between two planets that are sextiling over to a third planet.
Makes total sense.
Yeah, right?
Sorry, I couldn't say it with a straight face. That sounds insane.
It does. It does. Okay, so the sun is trining Uranus for him, and those are both sextiling over to Mars and Gemini. And what this entails is somebody who is more adventurous. The sun is trining Uranus. This would make him a trailblazer, somebody that's like ready to try new things. It makes sense that he ended up being the first man on the moon.
Yeah.
Like-
and also like throughout his whole life too, which we'll go over in just a
Okay.
minute.
Yeah,
like,
I don't know much about his life beyond this, so that will be cool to know.
Mhm.
And it's sextiling over to Mars, which means there is like a physical component to it. It's not like, oh, he's going to be like a daredevil in terms of like pushing boundaries intellectually, like, which maybe, but like there's a physical component.
like Plato coming up with amazing, pushing the boundaries of ideas.
Right,
This guy's
this
like, I literally need to go touch the void.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like I need to go do this thing or I'm going to be too restless. Like there's a restlessness here and it, like a seeker energy.
I would be so interested if I had something like that too. I get so I feel like besides the weak tummy that I have, I would have been like an explorer, like back
Yeah.
100, 200 years ago.
I mean, I wanted to be an astronaut until like I realized that I like get motion sick. You know what I mean?
For real.
Like I just, yeah, like when I was a kid, that was like all I wanted to do. But
One of the coolest things my parents did, I don't know why I remember this so much, but they brought home big boxes from somewhere and we put wings on the side of these boxes. And my mom gave me like crayons and markers with my brother. And we were able to design our NASA spacecraft however
so
we wanted to.
cool.
And I was such a space kid that I designed it specifically with NASA in mind. And, like
Yes.
I wanted it to be as official as possible. And I spent so much time in that box
That's
going on missions.
amazing. I had a Lego spaceship and different areas of my house were like different planets, like in order. This is the asteroid belt, like the kitchen's the asteroid belt. You got to get through there.
I love it.
Yeah, we would have been friends if we had met back then.
For sure.
Okay, so shifting culture. There's a lot of stuff about like culture shifts going on in his chart. Specifically, he's got North Node and Uranus in his 11th house. So 11th house is community. It represents like the world, what you're giving the world, like friendship, community. And he's got the North Node, which means destiny. He's destined to alter like the community at large, you
That's
know.
so cool.
And Uranus, like there's a rebellion, like it's doing something that nobody else is doing. And there's like a shaking up, and technology too with Uranus. Uranus represents technology. So you'd be pushing the boundaries of technology.
If you didn't know who this was and we did the reveal, that would have been amazing.
It would have been. I mean, you know, we can look at other episodes from my track record going in blind, but you know,
Today is not one of them.
no. So he does also have his midheaven with Black Moon Lilith. It's like almost conjunct, and Black Moon Lilith is in his 9th house of travel. So there's like this rebellious energy to like the traveling. Like there's all this like pushing boundaries, doing new things, going where nobody's gone before. Like he's got multiple things in his chart that would be indicative of that. Like Black Moon Lilith is close to the midheaven. So there's this rebellious thing. It's almost like people are telling you not to do something and you're doing it anyway.
That's really cool.
Yep. So that's what I'm seeing here. Very interesting chart.
Want to dive into his history and see where it aligns a little bit more than what we
Yes.
popularly may know about him?
For sure.
So it's recorded that Neil Armstrong first became infatuated with flight when he was only 2 years old, and his parents brought him to his first air show. He got hooked there, and then I think it was age 6, he went flying with his father in a craft nicknamed the Tin Goose, and that was where, like Amelia Earhart, locked in, you know?
Yeah, we've got a couple Leos that like to fly. Interesting.
That's really interesting.
We want to be as close to the sun as possible.
Oh, that makes sense. You guys are literally launching yourself off the planet to try to get closer to the heat. So he took flight lessons in high school, and he even soloed his first aircraft before he even had his driver's license. Which, like, how does that even make sense at all, right?
You know, you like run before you walk.
For sure. He was an Eagle Scout, so really involved in his community, and he actually even sent a message back to a Boy Scout jamboree when he was en route to the moon on 1969 because it was such a big part of his life. I was wondering, do you see anything about like education and schoolwork in his forecast at all? His birth chart?
He's got his son in the house of communication and education, and 9th house and 3rd house are where you'd really look for that. So he's got his son in the 3rd house. So clearly he is invested in learning and wanting to kind of be somebody who teaches as well. Like there's like a generosity, wanting to share what he knows with other people. He also has Jupiter, which can also indicate kind of like scholarly pursuits, opposing Saturn. So there could be some like learning restrictions or something, but there's also this desire to push forward and keep trying.
See, you didn't know that part. So we can continue the track record here because the restrictions are that he wasn't good at school.
Yeah.
He needed to be interested and motivated. It said that he graduated Purdue with a 4.8 out of 6.0 grade point average. And just generally didn't super care about that part of school. However, he becomes a test pilot and eventually joins the space program in 1958. And as part of NASA's Gemini program, now he's focused, and then he's into learning and becoming the best at what he can do.
Okay. Yeah. So that Jupiter opposite Saturn, it's like not true. Yeah. Like he wouldn't want to be like sitting still being told what to do.
And he's not like, writing essays on, again, The Great Gatsby. We're coming back to that. He doesn't care about the green light across the pond. None of us do.
Traumatized by that.
None of us do. It's coming back again. But so in the space program, though, he excels. And unfortunately, there were a lot of tragedies in the space program building up to Apollo 11.
Oh, wow.
And based on those tragedies, it just kind of befell the program that they needed more astronauts. There was, I can't remember if it was Apollo 9, but there was like or 4, there was like that fire in the cockpit during a test simulation. They were unable to escape. So safety measures were implemented that they could then do that. Anyways, Apollo 11 comes around and we are now set to do the moon launch. So it is July 16th, 1969, Apollo 11, along with fellow astronauts Buzz Aldrin and Michael Collins, are granted the mission to the moon. And so 4 days later, the craft set down in the Sea of Tranquility and reported back to NASA the famous "Eagle has landed" words. And Neil Armstrong at this point gains 19 minutes alone on the moon's surface before Buzz Aldrin joins
I just
him.
got chills.
Right? And my question here that I wrote to you is 19 minutes alone on the moon. What would you do, Ash?
Cry.
I think I would too.
Yeah.
I think there's nothing, I wouldn't be doing science. That's for sure. I think I'd be looking back at Earth. And
I would be looking back at Earth. Yeah. And I would just be like crying the happiest tears. Yeah.
Would you do it now? Do you think if you had the opportunity to go to the moon?
If I could be promised it was safe, like, I mean, how could I turn that down?
Exactly.
That's the thing.
That's the thing.
You know, and if you're going to just perish, like,
go to the moon, reach for the stars.
you know, I mean, like, that's a way to go.
That is a way to go. I would much rather go that way than like the end.
95% of everything else.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Yeah, I think I'd have to.
But I mean, like, it's not like a fearless thing to do, right? Because Neil Armstrong's, some fun facts that I read is his heart rate of a trained astronaut during the moon landing jumped from 100 beats per minute to 150. Like, they're monitoring that stuff. So yes, we all had some aspirations of going to the moon and the true fears of what that could entail.
Yeah, I mean, back then, like, I don't even know, like, is there something here? Like, what's going on?
For
you know
sure.
What I mean?
Like, yeah, the dark side of the moon.
Yeah.
Like, this was probably one of the per capita, like for its time, would probably still be one of the largest televised events on the planet. There were 530 million people watching the moon landing, which is back then was 20% of the world's population was watching the same thing happen at the same time. Like, that's crazy to me.
It is, but I mean, yeah, that makes sense.
I mean, I would be outside. Like, I don't know what I would be doing. Like, just staring at the moon. Like, I have no idea what I would do. I'd be running between the window and the TV for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he lived quite an exploratory life, even beyond his time at the moon. He continued work at NASA, teaching, as you had mentioned, as well. And he also joined an expedition to the North Pole in 1985, stating that he wanted to see what it looks like from the ground.
Wow.
You know?
Okay.
I just thought that was so cool.
You know, I think I'd go to the moon before I'd go to the North Pole.
For sure. Like, there's a reward there at the end. It's the moon.
I mean, you know, look for Santa.
I just feel like I would have loved to have known this guy. He was such like inspiration to me as a kid. He's why I wore the shirt today.
Yes, I know. I'm so happy to have him as a birthday twin and to have the same sun and moon sign as him.
Yeah, super interesting.
Yeah, we're gonna have to find one for you, like that's better than Thomas Jefferson.
Yes, please do.
Okay.
And that's really all I had for him today. I just find him such an inspirational, interesting person. He passed away on August 7th, 2012.
A lot of people pass away right near their birthday.
Yeah, and he had just turned 82.
Wow.
So yeah,
Interesting.
Long, exceptional exploratory life. And I know that you knew who it was when
I wrote, I emailed you right after and I was like, I'm sorry, Ty, but I know who this is.
And I was like, I still want to do it. I love him so much.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I think it was really interesting to do it this way in that it wasn't the gimmick surprise of the show.
Yeah.
But you can still see how stuff really aligned.
Absolutely. For sure. Well, that was awesome. I'm glad we get to talk about that.
Yeah. Thanks for letting me do it. We got a really, really weird one coming up next week.
Oh, good. I'm excited for that. So if you want more of our podcast, you can find us on Patreon, patreon.com/unclouded_I. I go into every day of the week. So this week there wasn't much going on, but we're going to still talk about every day, like what the moon's doing. We can check up on Chiron for Ty even.
You.
Yeah, we'll do that. So yeah, you can go over there and that's a great way to get even more astro content. And if you're looking to get a reading, I do those as well.
Yeah, I've had some people reach out to me asking how they can get a reading from you, both natal charts and you do tarot like we talked about.
I do tarot and I do transits too. If you're looking to see what is going to happen in the sky for you coming up. Just go to my website, uncloudedi.net.
That is .net, everyone.
.net.
You want to type in .com? It's not that.
No.
So go to .net. Get your. I think was it last year I bought everyone I knew like birth charts from you.
Yes.
Like that's a great Christmas present.
Yeah, exactly. It was awesome. Give people the gift of knowing themselves.
Oh my God, I can't. That was an amazing ending. I just want to stop talking right now because that was so good.
Do it.
Goodbye. Unclouded Eye stars Ashley Brooks and Ty Gowan. It is produced and directed by Nick Nordfors. Music is by Ashley Jane Cecilia and Jay Karen. Our community manager is Aaron Cross. Art is by Don Aquarius. It's presented by Haunt Me at Haunt Me Official on YouTube. You can also follow Unclouded Eye at Unclouded Eye or Unclouded_Eye on Patreon. Shout out to Emily Savage and Honey Lamb from the Patreon this week. Thank you guys for following and supported Unclouded Eye.